Hi everybody, it's Judy and it's Sunday from the sewing room. Every week I wanted to tell you that I struggle a little bit about what it is that I should talk about, and then suddenly something presents itself. So I've been working on a quilt from Tula Pink, and it's called a charmed life, or a charm. It has something to do with charm. And the quilt takes a layer cake, a charm pack, and some yardage. So I have the quilt I have it just about done. I just have to sew the rows together. And then I noticed that, when I'm stacking up my scraps to take them back to the shop, I noticed that, wow, I have quite a few charm squares, and I have 4 or 5 layer cake pieces left over from the kit. So I thought, well, what can I do with these? I really want to make something with the scraps from this leftover kit. And we all know we get some leftovers from kits. I like kits because everything is there for me. Sometimes I don't have to decide. I really like kits. But lots of times there's some leftover fabric from a kit. So in this particular quilt, there were leftover charm squares left over, a few squares left over from the layer cake and left over from yardage. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do with these? So what I did was I took the charm squares and I started making, I decided I wanted to make a pillow. So, and then I didn't want to make just a plain old pillow by just putting charm squares together, because the quilt is fairly complex. It's not complex to sew, but it's a complex look. And it has lots of triangles in it. And I really loved the half square triangles in it and how they use the triangles to make movement. So what I decided to do was do something completely different with some movement in it. And so I decided to make a pillow. And I didn't want to have to do a lot of cutting because I was tired of cutting. So I made, I don't know if you can see this really well or not. So I made a pillow with the leftover charm squares and the layer cakes, and I made prairie points with it. It's very 3D, and it's very in keeping with the quilt because it has a lot of triangles, and then I didn't have to do a lot of cutting. So I'm trying to turn it different ways so that you can see that this is really a 3D pillow. And it literally only took me maybe 2 hours to make because all of the pieces were already cut. And remember, this is scrap. I did this with scrap. This is scrap from the backing of the quilt. And then I put the zipper in. Remember, we had talked about zippers like 3 or 4 weeks ago. I put the zipper in the back. And again, this is backing that's left over. So a charm square quilt. So let me tell you how I did this. Now I got to move the camera again, so I will try not to bounce you all over the place. But let me put this aside. And I had an extra charm pack from a friend of mine. She gave me some charm squares because a while back, because I had commented that I really liked the fabric, and my friend Brenda was so sweet, and I've had these for a long time. And now that I made this pillow, I want to put together a pillow for her because she loves these purples. So I'm going to put you down here, and I'm going to show you what I've done. So I had a whole bunch of charm squares left over from, let me see if I can get this a little better, left over from the quilt. So now I'm going to do something here with them. Okay, right there. So here's just a regular 5-inch charm square. And like I said, when I made the pillow, I didn't want to do a lot of cutting. And I'll show you the pillow one more time. Here is the pillow, and it's made with charm squares that I've turned into prairie points. So what I did was I took the charm square and I folded it in half once to the point, and then I folded it in half again, point to point, and then I press it so you can see that it makes a triangle. And so I have a whole bunch of them that I've already pressed right here, and I've made triangles from them. So, and then I want to make sure that all of my openings are the same way. So I'm just going to lay them out on my background, and I laid them here the same way. Excuse my pins. So then I need a background fabric. So I like these purples, but I really want them to pop. So I chose for this particular pillow that I'm going to do, and I'm going to move the camera back, a black background. And I'll show you what I mean. So I took this black fabric, and all I needed was a ½ yard, because the pillow that I'm going to make is 12 by 16. I'm going to make a long one. So what I did to get them so that the rows were even is I marked my fabric. So this, I marked the bottom 4 inches up from the bottom. And to make this pillow, you are going to work from the bottom up. So the first row I made was 4 inches from the bottom, and I want that to be have more room because I really want to be able to center the prairie points after I get done making this. So let me flap this open a little bit here so that I can work with this. Okay. So now that, and then every other line I have here, I have marked 2 inches. Now when I looked at my prairie points, because these are in half, this is 2.5 inches from here to here. So, but I really kind of want them to hang over a little bit. So I made these lines 2 inches apart from each other and all the way up. And I just used chalk, and I used a really bright chalk so that you could see it. This is called a Choco Liner. It really works great. So after I got done making my lines all the way up, I made a ½ inch, or yeah, a ½ inch from side to side, because my seams are usually a ½ inch. Oh, wait a minute, I lied to you. I think I made that, yeah, it's an inch. I made it a 1 inch because I don't want to really go over the edge, and I want these edges to end up in my seam allowance like these did. See how that my edges are in the seam allowance. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to work from the bottom up. So I'm going to lay one of these prairie points, and then I want this to go over the edge just a little bit. I'll pull this up so you can see it. And I want my opening of my prairie point to be to the right. Now I've drawn these lines so that my prairie points are straight. And then I'm just going to pin that first prairie point. So I'm just going to pin it in place, and so that it's even with that line. And then there's no real scientific, here I'm going to move you a little bit closer. There's no real scientific method here. I just eyeball it because it's a pillow. I mean, nobody's going to be worried about this if they're leaning on it. So, and then I just overlap these, about a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to pin that next one. And remember, you want your openings to be the same because you want that overlap to look the same. And then I'm going to pin this next one right here. Again, no scientific method. I just kind of eyeball it, and then I'm going to pin it. So this is the chalk side of the fabric is the right side up of the fabric. And then I'm going to put this last one in. I would think I would like this one. I like this one. And I'm going to move you back a bit so you can see that. And I am just going to pin this one in place. Let me see if you can see that one. There we go. I'm going to just pin this in place. And again, this is going to go, I eyeballed this, and this is going to go over about a ½ inch from the edge. So Now, if you're real fussy and this is going to bother you that this isn't exactly even and this isn't exactly even, you can move things over a little bit because they're just pinned on here. So I am going to move this over just a hair. And then I'm going to move this one over just a hair. And that looks a little more even. So I like that better. Okay, so this took 4 prairie points. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this up so that my prairie points are inside of the front of the pillow top, okay? And when I do that, all of my edges, and you can push them a little bit further to the edge, and all of my edges are in there right now. So now I'm going to take you over to my machine, and I'm going to move that camera so that you can see. And I've set up my machine so that I put a bright pink in here so that you could see it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, and I have my 1/4 inch foot on, and I'm going to just simply sew all of those prairie points right in place through this folded fabric. And I'm kind of feeling as I go down to make sure that these points are in there. And I'm sorry about the lumps and bumps here, so I'm trying to move this so you can see this. And I'm going to just keep going, and I'm actually using a very generous 1/4 inch. And so I'm just going to make sure that that's all in there. Generous 1/4 inch, I can feel that point there, and that's all the way up to that fold. And then I'm all done with that. All right, so let me move you back over here, and I'll come back around and show you that once I open this up, all of my prairie points are now tucked into that seam. Okay, and you can see that they're all tucked in there. So then the next thing that I'm going to do is I want that next row, so I can unpin these now because they're securely in there. So I want that next row to be in there. So I don't really want there to be a huge gap here. So I'm going to take and I'm going to pin this one to the next row, and I want it to go over. I'm okay with it going over, and I'm going to take it to there, to this point, and I'm going to pin these prairie points together. And I'm going to keep pinning. Oh, I don't want that one next to that one. So I'm going to do this one. And now I'm pinning so that my points go in between these two. So this point is in between this one, and it's lined up with that top edge. And I'm going to keep pinning all the way across. So in other words, this row is going to have 2 more prairie points on it than the row below it. So I'm going to, I like this one. I'm going to put this one here, and I'm going to pin it. And then I'm going to take the next one. Oh, see, I pinned it the wrong way. So now I got to flip it over. And then I'll pin it. And then this one. And then I'm going to take a pin. Oops, one doesn't want to go in well. My pin is crooked. I'm going to pin this one. And then I will pin one more. I like the way this one goes. And then that one should line up with that edge. And then again, we'll just fold this down. Take your 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way across here. That'll be in there, and you'll flip it up. And then you can do the next row. So what happens is the back of your pillow ends up looking a little bit like an accordion. So I can take out this pillow form and show you. Hang on, sorry about this. How the back of it looks a bit like an accordion. Take this out. I'm sorry about the fumbling around here. So can you see, you can see in here how these are all, here's all my folds that has the prairie points tucked into them. So that's the class. We are taking scraps and making pillows. And this was, like I said, this was super, super easy. And it was really a lot of fun. So I really enjoyed it a lot. So Prairie Point pillow, it's really easy. Use your scraps and you never know what you can come up with. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I appreciate you all watching, and we will talk to you later. And I wanted to tell you that there will not be a live from the sewing room next week because it's Easter. So I wish you all a happy Easter, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.